It is Wednesday, and you know what that means? That means there's going to be a new episode of The Journey dropping. So, before we get started, we got to get some information out to you. The Houndsman XP has created its own network, and it's going to be called the Extreme Performance Outdoor Network. So what does this mean for the listeners? If you guys really enjoy listening to The Journey and the Houndsman XP and All Mixed Up and AMA, the Dogmen, you're going to have to go to wherever you get your podcast, whether it be Apple or Spotify, and I don't know where else everybody goes. That's kind of, I go to Apple, so I'm not sure. But on March the 1st, we are going to be switching from the Sportsman's Empire to the Extreme Performance Outdoor Network. So you're going to have to go in to where you get it and type in the show that you want to listen to. If you want to listen to The Journey, you need to type in The Journey with Heath Hyatt. There's a lot of other podcasts called The Journey. Make sure you put with Heath Hyatt in there, and it'll pop up. Once it pops up, you can like and subscribe, just like you did in the first time when you started following, and it'll pop up every Wednesday when we drop a new episode, and you're good to go. It's just a little transition there. You just have to type it in your search bar. It won't take you 10 seconds to do it, and we appreciate it. Once I figure out which picture or what my background is going to be for the podcast, which I'm not sure yet what I'm going to use, I will post that on my reels. I'll post it on my stories, and you can go, and that picture will be attached with it, so it'll be self-explanatory. So March 1st, everything's coming off the Sportsman's Empire. It's going on to the Houndsman XP network, which is going to be Extreme Performance Outdoor Network, and we're just going to keep rolling. So let's get this one started. Thank you guys for following us on the journey. It's today, but we're staying in Virginia. He's kind of in the middle part of the state, where I'm in the southwestern part of the state. And I actually drive through your area a lot because
oh God, I'm sorry.
When I travel down east, I come through Appomattox.
Okay,
and that's where you're at, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so I come through Appomattox. And when I go down to BB's or down to Doug's and hunt, I'm through there quite a bit. In fact, I'm kind of aggravated. I wanted to go to BB's this week and actually get the pups out and work them down there this weekend. But due to scheduling and daughter's activities, she's keeping me bowed up with this volleyball. But it only lasts for another month. Do it. Yeah, travel ball, like holy cow. But no, we're going to talk today. James and I, we started chatting over Messenger on Facebook because we have a common interest and what's going on with the legislation. We got to talking back and forth about it, and we're going to bring up some perspectives that we have that we think that everybody should either realize or need to be better at. And then we're just going to talk dogs because that's what we're about, is talking dogs. But James runs the Hounds Tales, so they like to tell stories about them old hounds, and I think they're going to get some good stuff coming in. But their mission on his podcast is to promote a positive view of hound hunting. And that's right. Us as hunters, that's what we should be doing. That's what we should be doing as a whole, as a group, and that's kind of what got James and I together talking. So Anyway, we're glad to have you on. James, tell my listeners a little bit about you, what you do, and then we'll just roll from there.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me. It's definitely an honor. My name's James Hudson. Like you said, I'm from Central Virginia, right here, smack dab in the middle of it. And I am mostly a field trial. We run the fox pens and coyote pens if we do travel down south, once we get out of the state. But between that and deer dog hunting, that's kind of my niche. That's kind of where I stick. And that's where the Hounds Tales Podcast, that's where we kind of center our focus at. But like you said, the main goal about it is, we want to tell stories. We want to talk dogs. I mean, that's what we're here for. That's what we want to listen to. But promoting the positive aspect at the end of everything is really what it's all about. You know, I try to end a lot of my episodes on what do we got to do as houndsmen. You know, all my guests, that's one of the biggest things I asked in the end of it is, what do we got to do as houndsmen to keep this sport alive? What do we have to do? You know, what is your opinion? What is their opinion, you know, on what we can improve on, what we can do better to make it to where we can both, me and you both can pass it down to our kids and let them enjoy it, you know? So that's kind of where, that's where my podcast, and that's what I do is, you know, I hunt hard and talk about it when I'm not hunting hard. So
it's a way of life. That's right. I can sit down and talk dogs all day long, and then I realize how much I don't know about dogs. Every time I do that, I'm like, yeah, man, I didn't know that, or you know, that's something else I can learn and do. So, I mean, that's the bonus about doing this crossover thing too. And I love this idea because I listen to y'all's podcast, the Houndsman XP, and, you know, I listen to a lot of these other ones, the Hunting Dog Public. You know, there's a lot of good dog hunting podcasts out there that I listen to, and I learn so much more. And you don't really realize until you listen to it how much you can pick up off of these other podcasts and these other like training methods and other ways of doing things for different dogs. You can really pick up a lot off of it. You know, and we're kind of repeating what we repeat because this is, I had Doug on here a week or so ago, and Doug said the same thing. Like, if you have an open mind and you will listen to other people, you will gain some type of knowledge. Now, whether you want to accept that knowledge or not, that's up to you. But and I tell this in every class I teach a lot. For the academy that, you know, for our department, I teach a lot of classes. I do a lot of schools for K9. And I tell people every time that if you look around this room, there's 20 people in this room, and you look around this room, everybody in this room knows something you don't. Mm-hmm. And if you'll be humble enough to accept that and use it as a benefit instead of a ego trip, you know, I'm up here teaching, and I will say that if you don't know what you're talking about, people can pick you apart really quick. They know if you're full of crap or not. And 100%. But there's always something to learn, and there's always value in it. And like I said, right. I preach it, I say it. Everybody around you knows something you don't. Yep. And, you know, I did an episode with a buddy of mine in the field trial world, John Monar, and I think he said it best. You know, the way he described it was, I don't care if they're 15 years old or 95 years old. There's going to be something that they do when we go to a field trial, go to a competition, that I like to walk around. And he said that. He said, I like to walk around and watch what these guys are doing with their dogs to prep them for the hunt. To do self-care after the first day or after the second day of field trial. And, you know, there's so much you can just observe. And if you ask questions, most houndsmen are not going to be like, oh, don't worry about it. Go on somewhere. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing. Most houndsmen, if you ask them, I don't care if you are competing with each other, you know, they're going to tell you. Mm-hmm. And you can learn if you just sit there and absorb it. And it's your judgment call as a houndsman to, you know, use it, don't use it. Yes, I like that. Yeah, no, I think that's stupid. But if you, like you said, if you take the time to just sit there and listen and ask questions, man, you can learn so much off of so many different people. And there's going to come a time if you stay, if dog life is your life, hounds, hunting, whatever it is, dog life's your life. Mm-hmm. There's going to come a time that you can pull that out of the tool shed and use it. I can promise you that, because every dog's different, every situation different, every training scenario is different. Everything is the only thing that is constant in life is change. Yep. And you know, like I said, you can the bigger your toolbox, the better the trainer, handler, houndsman you're going to be. Right. 100%. And you can listen to, like you said, you know, speaking on that, you know, you said change is big, but then there's things that you can take from, like, if you listen to these guys that were hunting dogs back in the 90s and how the dogs have changed and how the ways of hunting have changed,
yeah, there's a lot of things that don't work that they did, but there's still going to be those little tricks and there's little traits that they can, that dog's doing that. That's what makes a dog right there. Or I can do this with this dog and make him, heal faster or whatever, something like that. Those old heads, man, they know some tricks, and you can still, even though it is changing, you can still take those things and adapt them to the change. So that's, I don't know. It's just, that's one of the most beautiful things about this sport, even though it is changing, that you can still learn from the past too.
It's funny you bring up the past, because I was thinking about this. I had a long conversation about some Garmin technology here Sunday last weekend, and we were talking about the Garmins and technology and stuff. And we went back to talking about the old beep beep collars, and I mean, first 2 dogs I had, I didn't even have a collar. I just turned them loose and chased them as hard as I could go.
That's it.
That didn't work out too well, but anyway, I got to thinking about this. I was driving down the road, and I got to thinking about technology, because I fish a lot too. I love to fish. I stay on the water, but I don't have the scope, the Garmin scope, the live scope, and I don't have a fish finder. I do have a fish finder, but I use it for depth and temperature. That's it.
Right.
But you just talk about technology, because I'm talking about the past.
Yeah.
I feel like the old timers, and I think one of the things that has helped me as a hunter is I didn't have that technology. You had to learn the woods. You had to learn where the game traveled, where they fed at, where the food supply was, where they were bedding. And you had to get into those areas. Of course, again, the population back in the early 90s were nowhere near what it is today. And I think about technology as a whole, how it's made us lazy, and how it has taken away some of that knowledge that the old timers that taught me and you, that how it's taken away from that. And I feel like it's a great tool. I mean, absolutely. I like being able to know that my dog's going to cross right there in that curve on that hard top, so I can be sitting there to pick him up. Absolutely.
Right.
But I also know that, 10 years ago, I mean, I started using the GPS system in 2013, so it's been 11 years. So let's go back to, 08, 7, 8, 9. Let's go back to those years. And you had the old beep beep collar. You had to pull over, stop, and listen. Yep, here he comes. You had to pull over, stop, and listen. Yep, here he comes. And you were guessing exactly. Sometimes you guessed right, and you would be standing pretty close. And sometimes they'd cross 100, 200, 300 yards above you, and, it was gone. And today with technology, I think we're always sitting there waiting in the exact same spot, which, again, I feel like's made us lazy.
Oh man, I could do a whole episode on this, man. I really could. So I come, like I said, I come from a deer dog, background. I didn't start competition field trialing until I think 2020. So 2019, 2020. So most of my experience, I grew up deer dog hunting, and I did not pick up a GPS unit I didn't pick up a beep beep collar until 2020. That's just how I was raised. We used ears, and we knew the lay of the land. Mm-hmm. I'm lucky enough to be raised like that, but I'm also lucky enough to be where I grew up was right in the middle of our hunting lane, like right in the middle of all our blocks. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't nothing for us to go and say, hey, the dogs need to be trained to go flip the latch and on the gate and let them go. And they go across the road and go in and start hunting, and then you listen. And this is an old school way of doing it. And those dogs would come home. But like kind of talking about, the GPS and the technology, that's one of the big things. And it drives me nuts. When I'm deer dog hunting, I don't watch the GPS unless, like you said, we're close to a road. If we're close to a road, I'll watch it and kind of really make sure either A, I can get in front of them, or B, if they're going to come out of that hard road, I can catch them. But if we're in the block, I don't use it. It sits in the truck. It sits in the truck. I listen. Mm-hmm. And I grew up walking dogs. I grew up walking the dogs into the woods, hiking them in there. I know there's all the blocks that we hunt. I know how many bottoms are between this road and that road, and I can listen to the dogs and tell you in which path they are, which direction they're going, and how they're going to come out down the road. And my dad's the same way. My dad was like that. I was still like that. My grandpa was like that before he passed away. That's how they were. My grandpa was deaf as all get out, but he could hear a dog 3 miles away and then pinpoint him exactly. But on the deer dog hunting end, I think that's where the crutch has been with the technology. And like you said, the technology is a beautiful thing. I would never give it up for anything. I love it.
I don't know how I hunt without it. Like, you have it. And you're like, gosh, how did I get by without it?
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you can go out and do whatever you need to do and your dogs are 100% coming home safe almost not 100%, but 95% of the time, they're coming home safe every time. As long as the GPS keeps in connection and doesn't fail, as long as the collar stays on, they're coming home.
Yep. If a dog doesn't come home, it's because I was too lazy to get out of my truck and go get it. And
that's it.
I can't tell you the nights that I slept in the cab of my truck trying to keep up with dogs, and I didn't want to leave them in the woods. Like, I didn't want to leave them because maybe the area we were at, if they dropped off in a road and it wasn't safe. And man, I mean, it was nights after lots of nights. And you don't leave them. I don't have to leave them in the woods anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a beautiful thing. But then again, like you said, it's also a curse because a lot of these younger guys, I don't know how to say this without sounding degrading to the younger generation, but a lot of the younger guys that are getting into the sport are too busy sitting here doing like this, looking at their palm in the GPS box and trying to watch and judge a dog off of that. You can't judge a dog off of that. You got to get out and look, man. You got to really get out and study that dog. Watch what he's doing. Watch if he's holding the track. I'm sure in y'all's cases, see if he's staying on that tree or see if he's actually hunting the track up. I don't know a lot about the bear hunting side, but man, it's like if you're going to use that GPS to judge a dog, you're not going to be a houndsman.
No, but
that's just the God's honest truth about it.
I will tell you one thing though, that it was a kind of a shocker to me, and I'll give it a quick story. So when I first got the GPS, I had a ragtag pack of dogs. I had two really good dogs, and then I had some young dogs coming on. And with the beep beeps, you turn the dogs loose, you turn it on, beep beep beep. Everybody's in the same direction. An hour later, 2 hours later, they end up treed, and you walk half mile, however far, 2 miles into the tree, and everybody's there. Well, like I said, lesson learned here. I had a dog that was never stayed in the race, and she always ended up the tree before I got there, and I didn't know that until I got the Garmin. And I'm like,
no kidding.
Well, I just learned something right there. That was
right.
For me. Like I said, she was always falling out. She would make loops and do her thing, and then before I'd get to the tree, and this didn't happen once. This happened every race. And I would have never known it without the Garmin. Like you talking about your dogs holding the line. I would have never known it. The Garmin told on her. I mean, it told on her. Yeah.
I did an episode with Billy Gray from Outdoor Dog Supply, and he told a story like that, man. He said, I forget all the words, but he's like, this dog, I thought he was out there burning something up for 3 hours. He's like, and that dog was sitting on an island waiting for it.
Yeah.
It wasn't doing anything. And without that GPS, he never would have known it,
Mm-hmm. No, that's right. So, I mean, it's kind of like a two-edged sword. Like I said, it's gotten us as hunters a little lazy, especially the people that haven't grew up without it, for sure.
Right.
And then, the ones that did grow up without it, I believe we have a knowledge base that puts us a little bit ahead because of we had to go out and hunt. Like, you had to go out, like you said, and bust a brush and learn. You had to learn the animal. You had to learn the land. You had to learn everything.
Right.
And I just don't think we are that society anymore.
No, and anybody that is getting into the sport, or even if you're in it and you're still kind of learning, kind of thing, like we talked about, you can always learn something. But my advice is always, I mean, I know it kind of sucks, I know it's a lot of work, but if you're out there training or pleasure running, get out of the truck, man. Go out there and be with them. I know not everybody, hikes dogs. I'm old school when it comes to my deer dogs, man. I'm hiking them. I got commands that I holler out, and it keeps them close so I can control where they're going. And that's how I get them in certain blocks, So I highly advise, and even if you just go out there and walk the woods, man, you learn so much on how a dog's going to run. By walking those bottoms. Like, you can look at a GPS and say, oh, well, yeah, they're taking a beeline straight this way. But I know, because I've walked it, that there's a bottom between there and that road, and they're going to hit that bottom and take a hard right. And they're actually going to go up above where you think they're coming. Yep.
Yeah. Knowing those little benches and knowing those little hidden hollers. Like, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yep. Yes, but again, that's from getting out and doing it. Like I said, the lay of your land's a little different in hours, but absolutely,
right?
Yeah,
yeah. Well, and something else too, and I'm sure this is kind of a roll into it. I think that the GPS is also going to be what saves our sport. I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah, and I need to apologize to any of you deer doggers that heard my podcast. And that's what James was like, hey, man, yeah, so just to clarify, I said that, I see a lot of deer dogs without collars, tracking collars, and let me just clarify that. I haven't seen it in person because I've been very few times, and I will say that I was down at Chapokes back in early December, and hunted with the Clements, Whitney and her dad, and they had 2 or 3 truckloads of dogs, and every dog had a collar on them. So that was my personal experience, but you see a lot of posts. We talk about social media. You see a lot of posts with dogs, 20, 30 dogs running around, and none of them have collars on them. And that was my perception. So, perception is reality. That's what you think. But in my real life experience, the only time I've been, like I said, every dog had a collar on it. And James was like, yeah, we all run. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. So just forgive me. I wasn't talking out of ignorance or anything. Like I said, when you see stuff on Facebook all the time, and we know the Facebook, I call it fake book because it's never, half the time it's never right. But, you see a lot of posts with dogs running without collars, and that's what just kept going through my head. So my apologies,
right,
guys.
Well, and you got to think too, like my dad's dogs, like a lot of times, if he gets them back from after pleasure running, he'll, we don't have a leash law, it's open fence law in Virginia, and they're like pets to us. I mean, what do you do with your normal, your normal yard dog? You just let them out, you let them stay. So a lot of times, during the weekends, he just lets them chill out in the yard. Now, if they get a wild hair and they want to go run again, they go run again. And I think that may be sometimes where that confusion hits, or, jailbreaks. Jailbreaks happen all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably 95% of what those posts that are on Facebook are probably jailbreaks, the innocent ones, at least.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys, and a lot of those times they're just jailbreaks where dogs got out. I mean, hell, we had it last week. We had my running partner. We were getting ready to go pleasure running, and his daughter walked up to the lot and said, "I helped Daddy," and flipped the latch, and out the door they went.
They gone.
Out the door they went. So I mean, there's so many. Like you said, it's perception, but there's so many situations that
and you don't know what context or what the backstory is. That's that's another problem with Facebook. You don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Right. And that's, and anybody can go on there and write anything.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Anything. There's no oath behind it. Nobody's word is anything no more. You can go on there and said the grass is blue and the sky is purple, and everybody, oh my God, he really saw that.
Yeah, that's a fact. So James, what kind of what kind of dogs you run, and you got a mixture? You running a certain breed, or you got different dogs for different I know you said you run fox and deer.
Yes. So I'm one of the few that have, well, I say the few, there's probably more out there than I know, but I have a deer pack and I have a field trial pack. You know, some of my field trial dogs will run deer, but their main purpose and what I have them for is to field trial. The competition, fox pens, you know, coyote pens, that's what they're for. And those are American foxhounds. Those are fully registered, you know, by the book, pedigree, all that kind of stuff. Foxhounds. But now, and they're walker, you know, they're walker foxhounds. Right. I don't really mess with the Julys. I don't go to the trig and into that. You know, there's a little off kilter style, but you know, mostly July and stuff like that. But I'm a walker guy. Now my deer dogs, I couldn't tell you, they're mixed up bunch of stuff. I know there's not a beagle, and beagle guys don't kill me. I don't like nothing short, and I like to run.
So, well, that was going to be one of my questions is like, do you like your dogs to like flat out scald them, or do you like just to push them through blocks where they can get a shot?
So, and that's why I like where my deer dogs are at right now. Like I said, they're a mixed up bunch of stuff, but there's a little bit of foxhound in them. There is tree and walker. I mean, there's coon stock, you know, there's that kind of, you know, there's red tick, you know, and there's a big mixture. Like they come out all kinds of different, you know, patterns and colors. You know, I've had dogs that are almost solid white with a bunch of blue tick in them, and it's from the same litter, and it looks like a tree and walker in the next, you know, puppy. You know, it's just a big mix, but those dogs are slow enough to really break down and hunt. But if they get up on it, they're fast enough to stay with it and drive it out of the block. Me personally, and this is where the adaptive, if I was a millionaire, I'd have a pack of beagles. I'll put it to you that way. And the reason I say that is there's different blocks. There's smaller blocks that we have that are really thick, that have a bunch of roads in them. If you could take a pack of beagles in there and not blow out of the block in the first 10 minutes of the chase, that's great. Let them deer bounce around in front of that beagle. The beagle's going to hold on to it. They're perfect for that. I will never take that away from a beagle. But we also have blocks that are 1,000, 2,000 acres, and I'm trying to see how fast I can drive that government goat from one end to the other. You know, that's just the way I like it. I love pushing a deer. I love pushing it. That's just my preference when it comes to a deer. I like seeing it. I don't want to, if I shoot a deer, I want the dogs to be close. I want to pull the trigger, see the deer drop, and turn my head to the left, and there's the dogs. I'm not one that's, you know, okay, but here come the dogs, you know, a few minutes later. That's great. You know, it's personal preference there. But for me, that's why I like the walker, the long-legged dogs is for that reason. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, the one experience I had, the dogs were a little bit further behind than that. It not far, but I'd done enough video and like I'd see the deer come through, and within a minute, I mean, you're looking at a minute, so a little bit slower in what you're saying, but not ridiculous either.
Well, and I would say that's a safe average. You know, a lot of guys are going to get on Facebook, you know, like you said, they're going to get on Facebook, tell what they want to tell. But the God's honest truth is most time deer dogs are not looking at it. They're not, I don't care. I mean, you do have your times where dogs are looking at it, trying to breathe the same oxygen. But most of the time, I'd say those dogs are probably somewhere around that minute range behind, you know, 30 seconds to, you know, even a minute or two. Depends on what the deer's doing and how it's running. You know, big buck, that sucker's going to run a straight line. Big bucks run a straight line. They know, get the hell out of Dodge and let's get out of here. And they're going to put it in the wind and go. So that makes it harder for a dog that, and not necessarily harder, but it's not as easy to keep up. I mean, you got to think they're twice as tall as, you know, as a dog, as any walker. I don't care what kind of walker you have. They're twice as tall. So they're going to stretch out, and they're going to know how to stretch out. So those dogs are going to get behind a little bit.
And that leads me to another question, which I know it doesn't affect our listeners, but it's always something that I think about. So when you run a big buck out of a 1,000-acre block, because you said he beelines, how long does it take him to come back? How long before you see that deer again?
Usually next day.
That's right.
At the most. The most. I mean, we've even ran a buck in the morning before, like first chase, and the last chase we go back to that block and we ran that same buck.
So he circled right back.
Just circles. They know where home's at.
That's right. Yep.
They know where home's at. I mean, you always see a lot of your antis on there, and they're talking about, they drove the deer away and, this and that. There's studies, and if you read Austin Tomlin's book, he's got the proof behind it, man. Like they even collared deer, and I think it was like a 90-something% was back within like 2 days. Like that stat is just insane, and for my guys listening, what is that on bear? Do the bears straight line out of there, or are they more of a circle kind of thing? Like I said, I've never been, so I don't really know.
It depends. Most if you're in their home range, which they have a pretty big home range, like you'll catch a juvenile boar traveling to find somewhere, and now he may beeline it across 2 or 3 mountain ranges, but most of the time they're right back. Like, and I'll just use training season because that's a little easier. When the food, the berries are on, I mean, you can drive down the one logging road today, strike a bear, run and tree it. Come back tomorrow, strike the bear, run and tree it. Now, how many times do we tree the same bear? I don't know. But when you're striking in the same place, making pretty much the same race and treeing in the same area, like it don't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. And it's the same size bear. Like I carry a cow tag. One of my buddies put a cow tag in my truck, and he goes, I want you to climb up there and tag one of them so we can see how many times we tree it. It's literally, there's a green cow tag in the dash of my truck, but I haven't done that yet. But yeah, I mean,
if you better get it on video when you do.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. They'll laugh at me all the way. But I mean, we treat a lot of the same bear. So they're not leaving. Like you said, they're not leaving the area. That's their home range. They know every nook and cranny. Like they know this is where they live. Right. So they're back. And like I said, it may be a couple days, but they're back.
And you got to think too, deer and bear are both territorial. Like you said, they have their area, and I know deer will fight over a certain area. There's certain does that's where he wants to be. If we get a late rut and we're able to run during rut, I mean, my gosh, that's some fun running. But even in the late season when bucks group together, and the reasoning behind that, I don't know. I'm not that kind of person. I don't know all the ins and outs and specs and why they do this at this time, that kind of thing. But I do know late season, the bucks are usually staying together. I mean, we'll run a pack of 3 or 4 bucks at a time sometimes. And you can go back a day later and you can run those same 3 or 4 bucks out of there. But I think that's just a comfort. Like you said, it's a comfort. They know where they're at. They know where home is. They know where they're going to bed down. I mean, I can take you in several blocks and I can take you straight to where these deer are bedding down at. I know 100% where they're at. So, I mean, and I think that's why they come back so hard is this is their area. This is what they're going to do. This is where they're going to be. This is home.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I mean, they spent their lifetime there. They know where the food's at. They know where the bedding areas are at. They know where the safe zones are at. Like that's it. Yeah. I mean, why would you leave that? Just because a dog's chasing me in circles for a couple hours? Like, nah, I'll be all right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you got to think too, and I know a lot of the guys, on the field trial side, like when we go to these pens and pleasure run, especially if you go down to a coyote pen, it is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Some people are probably listening like, oh, coyote is in a pen or fox is in a pen. That's cruel. That's unusual, blah, blah, blah. Look, I got a pen that I go to, and when I come through the gate, there's 2 of them sitting at the gate waiting, and they wait for you to drop the gate. and then they take off.
It's
a game to them.
I need to do some trash breaking down there. You need to hook me up, man. I got 2 dogs. I need to test their patience a little bit.
I never believed it until I saw it in person, and sure enough, man, you go to some of these pens, and sure enough, you drive into the gate and you take your light and scan, and there's 2, 3, 4 coyotes sometimes just looking at you, just like, all right, drop them. And I mean, I've watched them like pitter back and forth, like, all right, here we go, we're getting exercise, we're gonna do this, and they just wait for the dogs, and it's a game to them. They love it.
Nice. So what's the difference? So you're running dogs, and I wrote this. I wrote me a little note here. So 3 of my dogs have quarter running dog in them. Mm-hmm. So I got them from Mike Kemp, and so they've got the running dog in them. Right. I really like the dogs. They're super fast. I like a dog that can pick his head up and catch. Like, that's my personal preference. Like,
right.
I don't particularly care for a dog that bobs his head and can't make up ground. Even though I own them, and I'll probably still own them, because that's why they call it a pack, because you got to have 5 dogs to do one thing. Unless somebody's breeding the perfect dog out there, and I need to talk to you. But they're super fast. They're gamey. The little bit when they're younger, they're a little bit weak on the tree, but after that 1.5 year mark, I mean, they're great. They're great tree dogs. And the thing that I do like, and I've had this happen several times throughout their hunting experience, is if your dogs pull up slick, mine going on bite, like, they gonna go, because they that track. So that's some positives, or some things that I've seen in those dogs that I really like. And like I said, I'm not smart enough to know how to breed that back and forth and make it work. I've heard a lot. I've asked a lot of people. I've got a lot of different opinions, and I just don't have enough experience with it myself. But I do know that, like I said, 3 of mine have a quarter running walker in them, and I like them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you're talking about if it's slick and they pull off real fast, and that's something I've really noticed about the foxhound, the foxhound walkers, the actual registered one. I think and I'm not calling these dogs stupid by any means, but I think their attention span is a lot shorter than some of the tree stock dogs. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is and I don't know if it's a cold thing. I don't know if like a cold nose thing, or I don't know if it's a scenting. I don't know if it's a brain thing, but I've noticed that as well. Like so in our instance, after a deer is shot, my tree stock dogs, my true deer dogs, those dogs are going to stay right there. They're not going nowhere. They're not going out to go find something. They've got their reward. They're sitting there looking at it. You're petting them, and they're right there with you. You don't have to leash anything. They're going to stay. Them foxhounds, you better put your hands on them, because they're going to look at that thing. All right, that one's done. Let's go get another one. They have no care about sitting there looking at it. They want to chase. Mm-hmm. I think that the chase is what thrives that style dog. And I may be talking out of my butt here, but that's just my experience. What I see out of the foxhound breed is that.
Well, and it's funny you say that, because I've, with this pack of dog that I'm running now, and all of them, all of them are pretty much the same. They prefer the chase. But once if we harvest a bear and take it out, they're not leaving, but they could care less that it's over. Like, they could care less. Like, my dogs are not down there mauling and wooling and whatever you want to call it. Like, nah, they'll sniff on it. Yep. All right. We did our job, and they'll go on. And, when people say that you've got to give your dogs game, you got to knock stuff out, like me now, with, a couple years under my belt and getting long in the tooth, like, I realize so more that if you've got the right genetics, like, that is nothing more than a uneducated statement.
Right.
You know, and yeah, you want to give your dog some game. Absolutely. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that,
right.
You know, to have to give them everything that they catch or tree, not hardly. Like my dogs are in it for the chase. Like you said, that chase is the game to them. Like it's the game. And, you know.
And I think instincts pick up so much. Like I think that's what that's kind of what you're talking. These dogs have such good, and some dogs don't, and some dogs don't. So my deer pack, when I got back out of college, you know, long story short, I ended up getting some of my dad's old dogs that he used to have, and brought it back home and bred to a dog that he had. And I know for a fact that the dog that I went and got, the male that he used to have, the mom to that dog was a purebred registered tree and walker dog, like 100% tree and walker. Mm-hmm. But she wouldn't tree a coon. She wouldn't treat a coon. She wouldn't run a bear. She had no interest in that, but she would absolutely drive a deer. Absolutely drive a deer. And my dad ended up getting her, I think, for free, if I'm not mistaken. Like he knew a guy that worked with somebody or one of those kind of situations. And the guy was like, look, you deer hunt this dog, I cannot trash break it, and she will not touch a coon. That's what the guy was all about, was coon hunting. Mm-hmm. He's like, she won't touch it. And he gave it to her, and that has been in my breeding program since. Because she was that good. So, I mean, that's where your instincts take over. You know, they tried, and I'm sure they knocked plenty of game out to her, you know, because I think she was 2 when we got her. And, you know, I'm sure they did all kinds of the training that you do for coons. And no matter what, she wanted the deer. That's what she wanted. So that's where that instinct, and if you can breed that instinct and keep that instinct in them, man, you talk about making something dangerous.
Yep. No, it's interesting. It's very interesting to see that, because, you know, I've been to the mindset on the front end of that, and like I said, I'm kind of on the back end of it now, that, you know, if the dogs are put together genetically correct, just let them do their thing. Let them do their thing. So.
Yeah, and you know, you said something earlier. I was kind of it was an interesting take. You know, you're talking about what do you put more foxhound in them, or do you put more tree stocking, or or bear dog into them? And you know, and that's something that I look for. Like so in my original pack, I got one dog left. I call him Vader. That's my boy. He's been my A1 since day one dog. I mean, he's been a once in a lifetime deer hound, and I bred him to keep his bloodline going. I wanted something that was just a touch faster, so I actually bred him to one of my foxhounds. So that's what I looked for. Is I picked that trait, and I got a deer. You know, I got a foxhound that she's our brood gyp, but she loves a deer, and she is fast, man. Like, she has got a set of wheels. And I bred her to her because I knew that, for one, she's got a good nose, so I'm not going to lose that nose. But I knew she had the speed. Like, he was a fast dog, don't get me wrong. He wasn't slow by any means, but I wanted something that was just a tick faster. And that's what I went after, you know. And I think that's almost what, you know, that's the kind of the way I look at it is I figure out where I'm lacking, and then that's where I go. Yeah. That's what I attack. Yeah.
And it brings me to another question. So tell me about the noses, because that's something I'm struggling a little bit with, coming from my old stock that I used to hunt. And again, we have a better bear population. I don't need a dog to get down and cold trail for days. I don't need that. But that's what got me into hunting, and that's what got me into the police canine world, was the tracking part. That's what, you know, the first time I ever had a dog, which was my old Frosty dog, and, you know, sit up on top of a ridge and listen to him trail down the holler and hit a dry creek bed, and he went down that creek bed, and then he went back up another holler and up the spine of a ridge, and, you know, he was trailing. I sat there and I'm like, you know, the reality kind of hit me is that he's telling a story. He's telling me everywhere this game went, and that if I did not hear him telling the story, I would have never known that animal was there. And that's what's so great about hound hunting. And I don't mean to get excited there, but it gives me chills just remembering that epiphany that I had sitting there on the side of the mountain that day, thinking about this. But anyway, the nose. What kind of nose does your foxhounds have?
Okay, so the foxhounds, this now you're getting touchy, because personally speaking, I don't think the foxhounds have the nose that a tree stock dog has. And now you may go talk to somebody that has what we call like old Hellum stock. And I have a dog that has old Hellum stock. That's just, he actually just passed away here recently, but a legend in the sport, mostly white dogs. And he was absolutely dominant for decades. And this was back though, when you needed a nose heavy dog. But that was when most of your field trials were on the outside too. Now that we're mostly in pens, I'd say 95% of your hunts, your field trials are ran in the pens. And like I said, you ask, and this is just the way I see it. Too heavy of a nose in the fox pen will get you in trouble.
Point wise.
Well, not necessarily point wise, scratch wise, like getting eliminated from the hunt. So there's rules in play, like running a covered track. There's loafing. There's failure to hark. Not necessarily loafing. Loafing's not, doesn't pertain to that. But the failure to hark, and pretty much what that is by the rules. And I may be misquoting that just by a hair, but I'm pretty close to it. If a dog hears a chase, if that dog's within earshot of a chase, that dog is supposed to hark to it. That dog is supposed to quit what it's doing and go. But if you got a track heavy dog that has a good nose, like I got a dog that it took him a long time to get adjusted to his nose because he had a good nose and it was getting him in trouble. So he wasn't going to these chases. And by rule, you can't give a hunting score. Yeah, he may be hunting his tail off. But if he's in a spot where he can hear a chase, by rule, that dog is supposed to go. By the rules of field trialing, you're supposed to go to that chase. You're supposed to drop what you're doing, go get in the chase, and go compete. So by rule, that dog's not allowed to get a hunting score because he should be harking. You may not necessarily be able to track him, scratch him, excuse me. You may not be able to scratch him, because he is still working. He is doing things that a hound is supposed to be doing, but he's not going to get scored. He's just wasting his time in the middle of that 5-hour block. And then you have covered track. Then that's a whole nother subject, but covered track is running over or hitting on and running a track that has already been ran over. It's pretty much what the essence of that rule is. So if you got a dog that has a really cold nose in a fox pen, you got to think you're in, anything from a 50 acre fox pen to a 1,800 acre fox pen. And if that dog runs over the same track a few minutes later that a pack just came through, the judge can 110% scratch that dog for running a covered track. So that cold nose that dog has, when in all reality, like me and you sitting here, like, man, that's a good dog. He's got a cold nose. I love that. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but to me, when I first got into the pens, I was like, man, I love a cold nose because that's what I grew up on. That Vader dog has one of the coldest noses. And like you said, it got me excited listening to you tell that story because I love listening to that dog. I could take that dog in a block and he would just boo, boo. And then, and it gets faster and when the more it gets faster, you're like, oh yeah, he's getting up on it now. Then all of a sudden he jumps and he's, getting after it. Oh my gosh, it just, that's what excites me in the deer woods. But in the field trial world, man, it's a double-edged sword. You got to find that perfect mix of having a dog that has a good enough nose to hunt, but not one that's going to get him in trouble.
Yeah.
It's a fine line.
I'm seeing with these dogs, and I said it on a previous podcast. I feel like I'm walking over some tracks that I shouldn't. But again, I can go find another bear, and my male dog literally put his nose in some tracks this year and went 200 or 300 yards on them, and then turn around and come back. And it makes me want to scratch my head. I'm like, dude, you can smell it, or you wouldn't have went 300 yards with it. You know, like,
right.
Go on the other 600 and jump it.
Right. Right.
So I don't know. Like I said, in a time or two, they took a track without saying a word and ended up catching it in a hole. And like I said, they'll rig a track 400 yards off the road and go find it. Like, or a bear, not a track, but the bear odor itself.
Right.
I mean, they'll do that, and then you just kind of scratch your head with, like, and I think a lot of it, I'm gonna go back to conversation Jeff Shetler and I had on a podcast last year. It's all about the training. I've not made the dog get down and trail. I've pretty much, he's been on all of my, their own bear that's runnable, because we have at this time and date, we have a good population, and I can cover some more ground or drive around the side of another mountain range and find one. If it was like it was 20 years ago when we only caught 5 bear a year, like, it'd be a different style of dog, or if he couldn't do it, he wouldn't be eating my food because I needed something else. So I don't know. I was curious about that. Like,
and I think you hit the nail on the head right there. I think it is a time change, and it's what we're expecting of the dogs. And what I mean by that is, like you said, with the bear population, it was the same way with the deer. 30 years ago, before I was born, deer were scarce here. You probably ran a red fox or a gray fox here in Appomattox twice as much as you ran a deer. Twice as much. I remember my papa used to tell me stories that he would just sit in a block and just listen, because that's all they could run. They wouldn't shoot the fox because why shoot it? That's what you're out there. That's what's there. That's what you can run. There's no point of shooting it, and he ain't hurt nothing. Yep. So, and a lot of clubs are still like that. Yep. But we're so heavily populated with deer now, and it sounds like bear are getting the same way, and we're getting in our area. Bear are getting insane around our area now. You don't have to hunt. So why does that dog need to hunt? Maybe that dog has gotten so used to saying, okay, I haven't gone 300 yards and I haven't picked up on a hotter track yet. And, this track hasn't gotten any hotter. Forget this. I'm going to dump this and let's go wander and see if we can find a different hotter track. And I think that's where a lot of these dogs are going, and in the deer dog worlds too. A lot of our guys, you don't hear dogs trail very much. You send them in a block, you give them a few minutes, they'll bump, and then bam, a minute later they're running. Yep. It's that Vader dog's one of the few in our hunting club that will take and just absolutely, once he hits a scent, you can walk him 20 yards. If he hits a scent, he's not letting that scent go until he finds it. Yep. I don't care if it takes him an hour and a half to find it. He's going to find it. Yep. And I think that's just where I think that's where the dogs have gone, and it's not necessarily the hunter's fault; it's the population fault. Yeah, yeah. Again, like I said, it's I'm not forcing him to do that, and I understand. I understand the ins and outs of it, and I understand that, like I said, population has a lot to do with it, and my hunting style, has changed. So yeah. Yeah, I was just curious on that, because I asked the guy, and this is one thing that I asked the guys with the Julys, is they said their dogs will tree. They said they'll fall off a cornfield chase and fall tree in the edge of a cornfield on a coon in a heartbeat. And I'm like, okay. It was very interesting, because in my mind, again, we'll talk about perception, is a running dog's a running dog. Like, they don't tree, but I've been proven, not proven wrong, but I've been told that's a complete false. That's a false thing there. Well, you got to think too, a fox will tree. Yes, gray fox. A lot of people don't realize that a fox will tree. We were pleasure running last night, and I had the red light, and I watched the dogs coming through the edge of the woods, and they blew it up in this one section. And I took and scanned the lights, and there was a fox had climbed the tree and just watched the dogs right up under him. A red or a gray? Should have been gray. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, should have been gray. Yep. Yeah. I mean, just they tree. So I mean, maybe some of these dogs are getting used to these foxes treeing. I mean, I don't know. You know,
that's
I
right.
guess it depends what they get used to.
Yeah. Well, James, we're almost at an hour here. And I know we want to talk about something else before we shut this down. So this week's been a very important week here in Virginia, and we're still not finished.
Right.
You know, the legislation, the Senate Bill 712 got, it was a tie vote, and our Lieutenant Governor, bless her heart, voted against it.
Right.
Thank the Lord. And I know that, and this is one thing I want to put out here for the people that's listening. You know, these podcasts are recorded, you know, a week or two in advance, sometimes 3 weeks in advance. So when we put out information, we're giving you the information we have at that time. And sometimes we can't give you like the exact information on the day that it happens. So I apologize for that, but just for the structure of the podcast, like, you know, we've got to have stuff turned in and downloaded to the platform at a certain time and date. So makes it a little bit difficult, but we're still trying to do our best and give you the best information and the most updated. But sometimes we are a couple days out. So that happened on one of the podcasts, and just want everybody to get that. But yeah, so 712 got voted down, a 2020 tie. Cree Deeds, Democrat, voted against it. I have already sent an email to him telling him thank you for voting no on that. And I don't want you to tell any names, but I want you to tell the story what happened when you were at Richmond on the lobby day.
So, you know, I was lucky enough to be able to take off of work and go to Richmond for the lobby day, like you said. And overall, I think it was a great experience. If nobody has ever done it before, I highly, highly recommend. You know, I'm sure other states do it too. You know, we're, like you said, we're at the beginning of this thing, we're both from Virginia. So, you know, I know in Virginia they do it. And if for anybody listening to, you know, I see a lot of things on Facebook that are like, oh, I didn't know that it was coming. I didn't know that lobby day was this. Lobby day is the last Monday of January every year. And I didn't realize that until this year, but that is it. So as a houndsman, if you know, especially because, I mean, this is a never ending fight.
Yep.
If you want to put your voice out there and go actually visit the people and see the people that are actually making the votes to make this stuff go through, put it on your calendar, put it on for work, go ahead and take it off. But anyway, that's my little plug right there. But so one of the main guys that are against dog hunting, and it doesn't really make any sense because I'm pretty sure he doesn't even have dog hunting in his area.
I think we can just give his. We know that Marsden wrote the bill.
Marsden
wrote the
that's
bill.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. So there was a big group in Marsden's office, and I was outside the office. I never got to hear it, you know, 100%, but I know for a fact that all of a sudden I watched his hands go up and say, everybody out, and close his door and lock the door. And no more houndsmen were let in the rest of the day. What I was told that from the guys that come out that were in there was that somebody had spoke up and said, Marsden, how long have you been doing this? And he said 15 years. And somebody spoke up and said, yeah, that's 15 years too long. That's from multiple people. That's word for word, 100% right after it happened. That's what was said. Yeah, man. And that just, it ticked him off. I mean, and he was very, from my understanding, and I talked to several people that were in the room, he was very adamant that he wasn't changing his mind. And we kind of know, you know, he's been after this for a long time. You know, he's the reason that fox pens are not, you know, able to be built and are going to be shut down in, you know, 30 more years, whatever it is. But he had a damn hat on his desk that said end all fox hunting. So, I mean, we know where the guy stands. So attacking the man is not, and it ticked him off, and it absolutely gave nobody the chance to have a calm, cool, collective conversation and maybe explain some things, and who knows, maybe bring a new perspective to his light, you know, from I mean, I was trying my best to get to everybody I could. And, when I went, I wanted to speak to the guys that represented my area. That's where I attacked first, and that's where I went after. And I was lucky enough to be able to get in and talk to these guys one-on-one. And then I started going towards Marsden, and then I got there as that happened. And like I said, he shut the door, and not an orange hat was allowed in that room after that. So, I mean, that was a big lose of the day, in my opinion.
Yeah, we know we're not going to change. He's very adamant where he stands, right? I mean, he wrote the bill. And he's telling you guys, but he was cordial enough to let you come in his office, and you said there was probably 30 people in there, and at least speak on behalf of what you did. And this is one thing, and I had this conversation today with a friend of mine. I mean, I live to hunt. Like, really. Like, I live to hunt. If I'm not at work, 98, well, I got to bring it back to about 90 because Maddie's keeping me busy. But, like, if I'm not at work, I'm in the woods or on the water. And that's what I do. I mean, that's what I love to do, and that's where I spend my time, and that's my life. And one thing that I don't want them to change any law. That's where I stand. But I also understand that sometimes you have to compromise or you lose everything.
Right.
And I would rather be a part of the solution than part of the problem. And you and I had this conversation that us as hunters, we have to represent ourselves better, and we get emotionally. And I'm as guilty. I raise my hand right now. I'm guilty because it's near and dear to me. Like it is. I've done it my whole life, and I plan on doing it as long as I can. And I want my children. I want my kids to be able to enjoy the things that I enjoy. But I also know that going and attacking people verbally is not going to help our cause. We need to have legitimate arguments for our behalf. We need to be well spoken, and we need to be articulate. That's one thing in my profession that, like, when I write a report, I have to articulate exactly what happened and why it happened and what took place after it happened. And that's something that that's something I think we can improve on. Yes, I agree 100%, 110%. And like you said, it's so easy to get emotionally charged. And I think, I don't know Marsden. I've never got to talk to the guy. I've never met him before, but I got a feeling that maybe that was kind of his ploy, and I could be talking out of my butt here, but how easy was it for him to say, okay, I'm going to just keep egging these guys on and get somebody to blurt out something. And now we're the enemy. Mm-hmm. Now we're the bad guy. Mm-hmm. We're under a scope, guys. We're under a microscope. So every little thing, I mean, you talked about perspective earlier. And I mean, that's houndsman to houndsman, not and thinking on having a different skew, a different view on the no collar thing, and not and having that kind of that different thought. For somebody that doesn't know dog hunting at all, think about how easy it would be to say that dog is not that dog is abused and that dog is this and whatever. Without us being able to go in there and explain in a calm, collective manner why this is a bad idea, why this bill was a bad idea, it just gave him more fuel for the fire. Mm-hmm. Is all it did. I mean, I think it was amended twice by the time it reached final vote. Yes. We a lot of people tried to push that last verbiage that was in there. And even with the verbiage that a lot of us recommended, It still got voted down, thank the Lord. But one thing that we all have to understand that this ain't over. This is just starting, and we've got to be prepared and organized. And like I said, we've got to come together as a community. All dog owners, because we all got lumped into this. Deer dogs, bird dogs, duck dogs, blood tracking. We all got lumped into this, and we're still working on the SB30 and the HB30. I seen some posts today about that, and it's got to go through the appropriations committee. But we've all got to stay together and do more good than harm. And I'm not saying that with him didn't harm us, because he's got his mind made up. But if we're going to move forward as houndsmen, we've got to do a better job articulating our why. Our why. And why some of these laws are not conducive. That bill was written poorly. It got some momentum, and I think that Senator Stewart was one of our saving graces, from what I'm hearing, that he got behind closed doors with Marsden and really tried to get some of that stuff changed. Because from Central Virginia to where I'm at, I can't tell you the miles and miles of road that run through national forest. There's no private property nowhere in between. And I can't turn my dog loose there. Well, put it on a lead and take it 15 foot. We all know how well that'll work, but
right.
So yeah, I just think, you and I having that conversation, and, we're both on the same page, and, you have an audience that you talk to, and I have an audience that I talk to, and this is about coming together and being better. That's it. Being better. Yep.
And that was one thing that I've been super impressed with lately. And I don't think it's perfect by any means, is that I remember, 5-10 years ago, where it seemed like if it was the bear hunter's problem, it was the bear hunter's problem. If it was the deer hunter's problem, it was the deer hunter's problem. And I think that we're getting better as far as uniting as one, instead of considering ourselves bear hunters. You're a bear hunter. I'm a deer dog hunter. I'm a foxhound guy. I'm a squirrel guy. I think we're all throwing away those titles and getting better about uniting as houndsmen. But and I think that works so good because, like you said, I don't hunt national forest. Everything in our club is private land. So that bill was going to affect a little bit, but nothing crazy for me. But listening to you talk about it, that puts it in a whole different perspective. Yeah. That would have really hurt you guys, And I never would have thought that without communicating with people, without, talking to you and listening and understanding the different points. Because at first, the way it was originally wrote up, the 712, I was like, it's not that big of a deal. It's really not going to hurt it. In fact, it'd probably do a whole lot of better. But now listening to you talk about how it's really going to hurt y'all in the national, in the state forest or whatever, I'm like, oh gosh, man, we can't have that. We cannot have it. So, and that puts a drive in me. Not that I'm saying that I was ever like, yeah, go, this is our chance to settle and make the landowners happy. But listening to you, it's more like, okay, now I really have an understanding of why this cannot pass.
Yeah. And I'm like, just like the guys down east, it's going to affect them too, because, there are blocks that they hunt around, and they've got permission on 1,200 acres, and there's a 50-acre block that kind of sits adjacent or on the corner that, like, it was going to affect a lot of people. And it was not going the law was not going to, it really wasn't going to solve the problem.
Right.
It was just going to cause more problems for us as houndsmen, or not problems, but it was going to cause more hardship on us, I guess, on the way that we do things. We was going to have to change the way we do things. And, everybody hates change. And again, that goes back to what I said earlier. The only thing in life is is a constant is change. So we got to adapt. But yeah, I mean, just we got to do better. We got to be more articulate and make sure that we can explain our position, why it's important, what it does and doesn't affect, and just do a better job of that all the way around.
Well, and something else with that too, if you do go to any of these lobby days, or if you go to, sit in on your board, your DWR board meetings and stuff like that, and you do get the chance to speak, guys, remember, they do not care that it's your heritage. They don't care. Mm-hmm. They don't care. They know that. They know. I mean, I'm sure they, everybody's going to have a soft spot for it, but they know that. Everybody knows it's your heritage. They know George Washington did it. They know all these things that you're bringing to the table that are, this is why I want to do it. This is why this is why I live for it. It's like you said, and you said it really nice. Like, you got to explain why the proposed bill is a negative. You have to make them understand that, like you said, with the right of way casting, mm-hmm. This is why this is not going to work. Like the SB 30. I can sit here and I explained this one to one of our guys, and I said, look, I was like, the way this thing is going to end up going with these dog permits and these dog hunter permits is it's going to end up like the Georgia rule. And I actually talked to a guy from Georgia that hunts under those rules, and they have stickers in the back of their trucks, mm-hmm. and it's got a number on it. And that's what your dog hunter identification number is. So if you turn dogs loose on Billy Bob's land that didn't like dog hunting, and he come out with a camera and recorded the dogs going across the land, and then went to the first truck he saw going past, and it was my truck, and I didn't do anything wrong. Now I'm getting the ticket, and there's no way to prove my innocence because you got it on camera that there's dogs turned loose, and now you got an empty dog box with a sticker, and that's who I saw, and all you have is the landowner's word. Mm-hmm. And the guy that I talked to, he was like, man, I never thought about it like that. He's like, man, that won't work, will it? And I'm like, no, it won't work. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. It's not a foolproof thing. And I think that day, I'm not trying to make some kind of claim that I've changed somebody's mind, but I think it opened his eyes to where this can go and why this is not going to be a good idea.
Yeah. 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 So, well, James, I appreciate you coming on, and we could talk for more hours, a lot more hours. Right. This hours flew by. It feels like we've been talking for 5 minutes. But anything you want to leave us with,
guys? And this is, and like I said, this is good because we got 2 platforms going right here. If we don't, and like I said, I don't know a whole lot about the bear hunting and the coon hunting guys. I don't know if they hunt as clubs and that kind of stuff. But guys, we can preach bad seeds to the DWR, to these senators, to these guys all the time. But if we don't start self-policing, mm-hmm. that's a huge thing that I try to preach is we've got to self-police. I know you may have a buddy that turns his dogs loose because a 14-point buck with the 23-inch spread just come through there. And God, we can't lose that track. Guys, we got to be smart, man. Mm-hmm. There's too many. No, you can't do it. You can't do it. And if you see somebody doing it, if they're in your club, I don't care if they've been your best friend since diapers. You need to either pull him to the side and say, you do it again, you're out, or you just need to go ahead and get rid of him. Because if we don't start self-policing, we're going to lose it. Mm-hmm. We can preach self-policing and bad seeds all we want, but until we actually start acting on it, we're just peeing in the wind. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've said that on several podcasts is, we've got to take care of that. We've got to police ourselves, and hopefully that'll correct a lot of and it's not the majority of people are trying to do right. And mm-hmm. sometimes people just get, they get excited and do something like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Problem fixed. Yeah. Don't do it again. Problem fixed. But then you got people that are continuously, skirting things, and that's what's causing us the problem. So yeah,
that's it.
All right, James, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you for helping us teach, train, and learn.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you doing this dual podcast here. And I hope everybody on my end enjoyed it as well. And thank you so much for doing this, man.
It's a great time.
Absolutely, buddy.